Hello and welcome to Matrix Live. My guest today is Rich. He's going to talk about Element WebR with me, a new flavor of Element. Rich is a member of the crypto team, working closely with the Element Web team, and also a Spec Core team member. Is there anything you don't do, Rich?
As I was saying earlier, yeah, jack of all trades, master of none, maybe. But great to talk to you, Tim. Great to be here.
Yeah, so tell us more about that Element WebR thing. This is not the first the first Element R I'm seeing. There used to be an Element R, but it was on mobile, Element iOS at least. So Element iOS R was using the Rust SDK, but not entirely. Is it the same thing for Element WebR?
Yes, so it is. So there's a couple of things going on here. So Element R is our project to make our Element apps, web and mobile, use the cryptography parts of our Rust SDK. So you can take the Rust SDK is split up into various parts, but you can take just the crypto part and use that to implement the cryptography parts of an application. Or you can use the entire SDK, and that gives you much more of a client application. It will control things like the timeline, the room list, all that sort of stuff that you need to write a complete application. So yeah, our two projects, Element R is replace the crypto parts of the application with Rust SDK. Element X is what we're doing on the mobile apps, and that's much more of a ground-up rewrite to replace the entire app with the entire Rust SDK with a shim above it. So yeah, as you said, we started with Element R on the mobile apps. They've gone on to Element X. And the web application is catching up a little bit in that we're just now doing Element R for web.
Right. So Element R for web is just using the crypto bits of the Rust SDK and not the whole Rust SDK. One of the promises of the Rust SDK was to have one SDK to rule them all. So why sticking to the crypto bit of the SDK? By now, it's used in Element X, so it should be fairly polished.
The crypto parts certainly are, yes. So okay, so the question is, why aren't we using the whole of the Rust SDK in Element Web? And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that the Rust SDK so far has been tailored. It's been focused more on the mobile applications, I guess. And if you're designing an application for the web, it's a bit different UI-wise to how you might approach things from the mobile. And so we can't necessarily take things that the Rust SDK has done with a focus on the mobile clients and stick them straight into Element Web. But I think more significantly, Element Web is a much larger application than the mobile apps were. It's a lot, so it would be a lot more work to convert all that functionality to Rust. So that's just really because you can do more with Element Web than the mobile clients. So for now, at least, we think the biggest bang for our buck is going to be just replacing those crypto bits of Element Web with the Rust SDK implementation, with the Rust implementation, and leaving the higher level stuff, or the say the timeline management, the room list management, all the UI bits, pretty much everything else in JavaScript for now.
Right. You mentioned that the Rust SDK is primarily focused on mobile applications. I just need to note that there is the Fractal developer. So Fractal is the Matrix client for GNOME, and it has several developers, including Kevin Komai, who is a huge contributor to the Rust SDK. So thank you very much, Kevin. We know it's not exclusively for mobile.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, it's just the things we're doing with Element Web aren't quite catered for by the Rust SDK at the moment.
Yeah, right. Fractal also has some limitations as compared to Element Web, for example. It's less featureful. It's a very nice client, but for example, I don't think it supports threads. and there are various things that Element Web supports that Fractal does not support at the moment. So the next question I had was, why now? Did you want to let Element X and Element R on mobile basically hit the corners, bump into the corners before moving that to Element Web?
Yeah, there was an element of that. I guess we wanted to try it out on the mobile clients first and see how that went. And Element R on the mobile application was pretty successful, and so based on that experience, we thought we'd do much the same thing on the web as well. A lot of it just, it comes around to which teams have availability, what makes sense at the time in terms of what's going on. The mobile applications were sort of more in a position where we could completely freeze development on them, with the ultimate focus of Element X for them. We can't really do that for Element Web, which makes it a little bit trickier. We sort of got to do more changing of the wheels while the car's going along now. So again, we wanted to leave it a bit later.
All right. So you mentioned freezing the development to move to the crypto crate, so to move to the crypto bits of the Rust SDK. I guess it's not trivial to use that crypto crate. You need to adapt a few things. Did you have issues into trying to make Element Web use the crypto crate of the Rust SDK?
Right. So for the crypto crate, we have been able to basically slot it in alongside the legacy parts of the crypto. It's if you're trying to adopt the larger Rust SDK that you really need to sort of stop and start again. For the crypto crate, yeah, we did find we needed to make a few changes to the way the JS SDK works. So what we've done is we've taken the cryptography parts of the JS SDK that used to be all JavaScript with a bit of transpiled C. We're taking those parts and replacing them with the Rust implementation. For the most part, that's meant that we've been able to leave the interface between the JS SDK and the application alone. But there are certainly some parts where that just wasn't possible with the way the Rust SDK needs to work. There's quite a bit of stuff becomes asynchronous, where previously you could expect it to return synchronously, those sorts of things. So yeah, some changes to the JS SDK's interface and consequent changes in the application layer in React SDK and Element Web. It's also given us a bit of an opportunity to clean up some of those interfaces. So some of the JS SDK's code has evolved a bit as the years have gone by, and hasn't always had the love it needed. And so it has been a bit of an opportunity for us to go through, make sure we clearly document what all the interfaces do, how they behave, and really get some confidence that they're doing what they're meant to do.
Right, so you're talking about confidence. The first thing that comes to mind when you talk about confidence is test. So was it an opportunity to introduce tests? And were there end-to-end tests or very local, narrow tests?
Yeah, so yeah, it was absolutely an opportunity to add more testing. We didn't have the end-to-end testing we wanted, so it's been an opportunity to add much more end-to-end testing. We've done that at the application level, so we use Cypress testing against web, and that will actually drive the web app. And now we can automatically run all sorts of scenarios like user verification and just basic encryption and key backup type scenarios, which really weren't end-to-end tested before. So that's been really good. We now have much more confidence that those not only work, but they will stay working in the future. And we've added quite a lot of integration testing at the JS SDK level as well, which again is part of making sure that JS SDK interface all behaves as we believe it should, which again was patchy before.
Right. So you mentioned the Cypress tests. Those are pretty impressive to me. Basically, you have a computer that is impersonating a human and trying to use the app as a human would, and you are able to see the regressions very quickly because if the app does not behave from a human perspective, like it should, you can see that something is wrong. So super, super powerful. I've been really impressed by that. And that means you should be able to use eventually the Rust SDK entirely and get rid of the JS SDK using Cypress test and be confident that it works, shouldn't you?
So I guess so, in theory. I think the problem is that it's going to be an awful lot of work to replace the entirety of the JS SDK with Rust SDK, and it's always difficult to know how to approach a project like that. Um, if so, one approach is the ground up rewrite, which is what we've done for Element X and the mobile clients, and you basically say we're going to stop working on the old application, and now everything new is going to go into the new applications. Which is fine, but it can take a long time to get there. In the meantime, you're sort of in this horrible hinterland. And yeah, you've we've got a lot of people relying on Element Web, and so it's difficult to do that. The other approach is to sort of try and take bits of the Rust SDK and try and plug that into Element Web. So we might do some of that, but again, it doesn't really fit with how the Rust SDK is designed at the moment. So I guess the short answer is we're not quite sure which direction we're going with on that at the moment, and we'll see how things pan out. We're thinking about it.
All right. So uh, there are clear benefits to using the Rust SDK for everything, even if it has a cost. What are the direct benefits of using the crypto crate exclusively? Is there anything to gain, or is it just to be happy that we have more Rust in Element Web?
Well, that's a win in itself, of course. I mean, the reasons we really wanted to use the crypto crate are, for one, so that we have the one single implementation. So we want to do a whole bunch of work in the cryptography area to improve reliability and user experience, and having a single implementation backing all three applications should mean that we only need to make each change once with small amounts of change in each application. So that's a win in itself. The other important thing is that cryptography code, you really want it to be right. You don't want security holes, particularly in your crypto code. And Rust as a language is much easier to have confidence that your code is right and that you're covering all the edge cases. The Rust compiler will shout at you if you forget any edge cases, which JavaScript won't do at all. It'll happily go along until the attacker finds the loophole that you forgot about. So again, this says to us that the crypto crate in particular is big bang for our buck in replacing that part with Rust implementation, maybe more so than some of the other parts of Element Web.
So from the developer perspective, it means that you are more confident when you are building the application that you are not leaving holes. And from the end user perspective, does it mean that we are likely to see less of those super annoying and unable to decrypt messages?
Yeah, we hope so. To be honest, like in this first stage, we're largely looking for parity. We think that the conversion to Rust, we fixed a couple of bugs along the way, which will be nice, and so it should reduce them a bit. Probably not a great significance. There are bigger changes that we need to make to the protocol to really flush them out. But again, that should be easier once we've got one implementation. The Rust implementation should be faster in most cases. It deals with the underlying database more efficiently. So we expect to see better performance, particularly for encrypting messages in larger rooms. So that's a win for the user. Yeah.
One thing I didn't think of asking earlier is it's the Matrix JS SDK that is relying on the Matrix Rust SDK crypto crate,
Yes.
right? So
Right.
if we have other clients, like for example, I really like Cine as a client, it's relying on the Matrix Rust, Matrix JS SDK, so it's going to benefit from those changes as well.
Yep. That's right. Yep.
Very cool.
For now, the JS SDK will still by default use the legacy crypto implementation, but in a few months' time, which we'll probably talk about in a bit, we're gonna switch over to Rust being the default for the JS SDK. So any apps using it will magically get the Rust implementation.
Right, in a few months, but I like to live dangerously. So where and how can I try the Element WebR implementation?
Yeah, so this is the exciting news this week, which is that we have enabled Element R on the development deployment of Element, develop.element.io. Now, warning, develop is it's our bleeding edge. It can break, and you won't get your money back if it does. But if you're keen to try it, log in on develop.element.io. The Rust crypto implementation will only be used for new logins. So if you've already got a session on develop, you'll need to log out and log back in to pick up the new implementation. But yeah, we're keen for feedback. So let us know how you get on with it.
Okay, and if I like to live dangerously but on desktop, do I just need to update Element nightly or?
Okay, not quite yet. We've got a bug we need to fix on the desktop implementation. It's around event search. It kind of goes a bit crazy if you have event search switched on. So we haven't enabled it on nightly. It is our plan to do so in the next couple of weeks once we fix that bug. If you want to live really dangerously, then you can switch off event search and run your own custom config. So you install a local config.json and try it out in Element Nightly that way. But that's for the adventurers at the moment, I guess.
All right. You mentioned in a few months that Element WebR is going to make it to the stable branch.
Yeah.
Is it the only rough idea you have in terms of timeline, or do you have more precise milestones?
Yeah, so we need to talk about next steps for Element R. We've got a fairly there's a bit of a long list of bugs, known issues, and things that don't quite work right that we want to flush out before we do make it the default everywhere. Yeah, I said a few months. Hopefully, it'll be in weeks rather than months. But yeah, the bug tracker has it's probably got about 20 bugs in it that we need to address before we can turn on. One of the there's a couple of big ones. One of them is you can't use it in Firefox incognito mode, for example. It's like that's a
Rather
thing we think
annoying.
we ought to support, but currently don't.
All right, so basically you want to make sure that Element WebR works really, really, really well
Yeah.
before merging it into stable.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that's very thoughtful. Thank you. All right, is there anything we forgot to mention that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I want to give a shout out to all the other people that have worked with me on this. It certainly hasn't been a one-man project. It's important to give a shout to the Rust team that made this SDK that we've built it all around. Demir, Jonas, Ivan, those guys, and of course the other guys working with me in the crypto team, Valère, Florian. Yeah, it's been much of a team effort, and yeah, we wouldn't have got here without any of those guys.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Rich. And Matrix Live, keep in mind that Element is a very important player in the Matrix ecosystem, but as we have said, all the changes are going to be merged into the Matrix JS SDK eventually. And this is going to benefit all the clients that use that. And the Matrix Rust SDK is also benefiting all the clients that use it as well. So if you want to support the Matrix Foundation in this mission, you can donate or become a member. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to join us and support us financially. In the meantime, take care, and I see you next week. See you around Matrix Live.
Bye.